Hive, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the knee-jerk reaction, first reaction to Abies Fraseri, episode 803, and written by Madeline Brestal and directed by Metin Huseyin, who we haven't seen, I think, since season 2. So yeah, it's great to have him back behind the scenes working. I did see all the directors that we're getting now. I have seen a list of them. I do want to talk to you about some changes I am making a little bit on the scheduling of how I'm doing the coverage for this. I decided that, I usually am doing this knee-jerk reaction live thing, and then I said I was going to do the Outlander Buzz thing as a second, more recorded show. I'm finding it's like almost impossible to try to do those at the same time within the season and to get it out. And I'm also thinking that it will be better if I do it after the season, so I can kind of talk about it comprehensively. I can point out things they did in the earlier episodes that fed things that happened in the later episodes and talk about some of the adaptation choices and stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is I have two things finished from the Bomb Buzz ones that I still have to get up. So I'm going to work on getting those up. I'm going to do these weekly because I also have a special show I'm doing with Jeff after 5 episodes, like a midpoint wrap chat, where we are so far. What do we think about everything so far at 5 episodes, and then another one at 10 after all of the episodes have aired. Then I have a show with Chelsea, a live show I think we're going to do on Diana's episode. So between 9 and 10, we're going to do a show. So that's already extra shows I have. And so I don't want to try to get out each week another full produced show. They take a long time to do. So I think I'm going to do those after, and it'll be kind of nice because it'll kind of give us a chance to relive the season as well afterwards. It'll kind of prolong it, give us something else to look forward to each week. And then I also will finish the other 4 of the Bomb ones because we'll be getting ready to look toward Bomb as the next thing that we do. So, hi Janine. Hi Terry. So that's the plan. So I'm not going to have the produced Outlander Buzzes until post-season. We are going to have 3 special shows, 2 with Jeff at the midpoint and the finale, after the finale, and then 1 with Chelsea that we go over Diana's episode and kind of talk about what we think for the finale and how we think it's all, like how it's shaping into the end. How we think it's going to roll, and then plus talk about Diana's breakdown as well. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I hope that works for everybody. I just don't want to be where I'm running myself ragged and then I'm still not getting stuff out, and then I can't really do outlandish predictions because now I'm already past the next episode. I didn't want to get into all that, so I just decided this would be better. Okay, so from now on, that's what we're going to look for, these to come out. I'll have this one and the next one and the next one. And then after that 5th knee-jerk reaction, I'll have a show with Jeff that week, okay, about first half of the season. But it's hard to believe we're only have another 7 episodes left of this show. We're past the quarter-way mark for sure. And we're getting close to the halfway point. It feels like it's just flying by. So that's our plan on that. So Abies Fraseri, written by Madeline Brestal, directed by Metin Huseyin, I think you say it. And the episode description is: a new neighbor relies on the Frasers for help, and Jamie exposes a false ally. William looks into the mysterious circumstances of his cousin's death. And again, this was an hour episode. I'm really getting sad that we're not getting longer episodes. I really, really thought we were going to get some of those. Hopefully we will at the end. I'm praying. So general episode thoughts. I really thought this was a good episode. So much dialogue from the book. Even though they made a lot of adaptive choices in the show, they still incorporated a lot of book dialogue. And because of that, I think we got a lot of humor in this episode. Humor, really this season, we've been getting a lot more humor invoked and incorporated into the show, which we've all wanted for so long, that we always keep saying, we're missing Diana's humor. We're missing the humor aspect of the books and so forth. So I really feel like they've been trying to give us more of that. And I saw a lot of that in this episode. They even went so far as to release some post publicity where they kind of showed all the one liners, and that was shared here in the Hive. And it made you remember, like, yeah, there was a lot of funny bits in this episode, and it's been running that way. You're getting more of that wisecracky Jamie humor, just some of the facial expressions from Claire and from Bree. Even we got a little bit of Lord John's wisecracky humor. Well, it's a good thing that it'll be a solution that fits both of us then, huh? And it just like a lot of these little bits, even some things that weren't Diana's dialogue, like that bit with John, still sounded like John, felt like John talking, and his type of dry humor. So I kind of really like that aspect of it. I had a hard time really getting how I felt on this episode. It's really hard because so much is happening in one episode. They're cramming so much into these episodes, and this it just feels like we're getting into things. Remember, I always told you that, like last time with the bomb, that the 3 up mark is a mark where you really need to set a tone for the season. You really need to be getting into the stories by then. You really need to kind of get a vibe of how the season's going to run for it to grab people. And you see that in this episode. You're really getting deeper into the different storylines and kind of getting advancement in the storylines that they laid in. So you're getting that, and you're getting a lot of like things to hook you in this episode. The turning of Cunningham, the getting of the blue light power, and the whatever with Amaranthus, and just different things are starting to kind of advance. However, it does feel really crunched, and because of that, it feels jolty sometimes, because some of these things are things that should be kind of the whole episode is around that thing. You know what I mean? Like Claire getting her blue light power, like the revelation of what Cunningham is doing and all of that. Certain things that are like weighty that you kind of need to explore and go, wow, they kind of are just jumping from that into the next thing. And that feels like it's not getting enough weight. They had some strange jumps from scene to scene in this episode, where it kind of went from a very moment that you're kind of absorbing what just happened. It's like this other action, totally different scene. And it kind of gave me a jolty feeling in that. So I really liked it. A lot of really good parts in this episode, but it did have a little bit of joltiness to it for me. It feels just really like there's just so much happening. And I usually, by the 3rd episode, I get my brain adjust a little bit to the speed of the season, but I still feel like, oh my God, I couldn't believe how much they got into this episode and how much they covered in this one episode. It's not even a Tony episode. God only knows when we get her episode, how much is going to get covered. So the title and title card, we had this Abies Fraseri title. And Chelsea and I had talked about it in our, we were talking about the titles and what they could mean. And part of what we thought is true. We didn't get the whole code, it being the code thing, who would have expected that? They did focus a lot on family connections. And they did focus a lot on, which is what I kind of was leaning into, Amaranthus in her Latin terms for botany and for insects, and kind of really fleshing that out a little bit, her personal history. So I thought that had to do with it, with the Latin phrase and the botany type of description of something. So it did get that, but there was of course this other thing that we couldn't predict. So I give us like a C, C or a B on our prediction. And then we got the title card was the Beatles and stuff with all the Latin names on the board. And where it finally sits on, like at the end, is the Hercules Dynasties Titius one that they talk about. And it's one of the things they really talk about, and they kind of use as a double play in that scene. And it kind of is a description of Jamie and of William, okay, in the way that it's described and broken down. I'll talk about that when I get to that scene. But I kind of feel like that also leans into the family tree aspect. that idea of this particular bug being iconic of both Jamie and him as well, of having two sides to your character. We also find out from Amaranthus, her family tree a little bit, that she's not noble. Her father is a bookseller and naturalist, and her grandfather was a botanist. Now, in the book, when this came about, a lot of people theorized, because we actually meet the father in the book, William meets him. And it was actually theorized by a lot of people that if she's a time traveler, because we still don't have the whole 411 on Amaranthus in the book either. But a lot of people theorize that if she was a time traveler, that maybe what the guy that they see is connected to Master Raymond in some way, or is Master Raymond, or is in some way connected or shapeshifted from Master Raymond or whatever. Okay. That's possible if that's who she is and what she is. And so this kind of feels like they're leaning into that because first we see the necklace that she's always wearing that has the clock face on it, which is unusual. And she always is wearing it. So it kind of makes me think they're hinting in that she's a time traveler. Now we got this bit where they bring into the story who her father was, who her grandfather was, which is in the book, but it's not really necessary if there's not going to be this whole trip to Philadelphia and going through all that, which I don't think they're going to have time to do. So I feel like that's in there still for a reason. So they could be doing that. And maybe that's where we see Master Raymond. I don't know. And then if that's the case, they're going to make it where, you know, if they ended up being a love match, then it'll be they are a mirror of Jamie and Claire, because you know she was a time traveler and she had to be secretive and all this other stuff. But I still don't get good vibes from her. If they do that, I still don't feel like she came off. Even though yes, Claire had to keep secrets and stuff, I just still feel like she's a money grubber or she's up to no good, like she's with the spy network or whatever. And this episode didn't relieve my concerns with that at all, which I'll get into. Let's see. So my second viewing felt much better. Hey, Margot. So what do you think? Do you think that's where they're going with this? Because that was a theory that a lot of people thought, you know, maybe she's a time traveler, maybe she's the lost daughter or whatever. All of this type of stuff. There was like a question about that in the books. And with her wearing the thing, are they going to make her a time traveler and then make it like that's why she was so secretive? That's why she couldn't tell this and that and the other. I don't know. But they did do some things different, which we'll talk. We did get some subtle transitions between storylines. Definitely, we still are sitting here with two very distinct storylines, very separate from each other. But we kind of are seeing that next week, those will start blending and overlapping a little more. But we did get a couple little interesting transitional points, like when they were talking about Lord John, which was quite a bit in this episode. Then we would get cut over to the Lord John scene, even though it really didn't have anything to do with the scene. They did find some little ways to kind of draw lines and connect the dots. We ended up getting bits from 3 books, Echo, Moby, and Bees in this episode. So it did feel a little bit like we kind of got pieces from all over that they put together in this episode. At this point, now that we're at the 3-beat mark, I really see a couple of themes coming out strong. And one of them is, of course, like family and legacy and that type of thing. But the other one is kind of the circle of life and death. When you think about it, we've had all kinds of circles of life kind of vibe. Things die, things live, but something was dead in this. We see, you know, the one baby was born and wasn't alive, wasn't breathing or whatever, and then came back. We saw last episode Amy died because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the same episode, we have Ian and Rachel's baby be born. So we're kind of getting that sense in here that this is about life and death, the big picture, you know, and which is appropriate for the final season. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to talk about everything that's happening in Savannah, and then I'm going to go over and talk about everything happening around the ridge. Priscilla's not in a lost daughter or time travel camp. They did say Master Raymond will not be in a scene with Claire, so I can totally see Amaranthus' father turning around and it being Master Raymond. I like the idea better of her being a time traveler, but with the plotty group, like Richardson and all of being a bad person with the time travelers. I really don't want it to be that she's somehow this good person and, whatever. Me, she's plotty and manipulative. I don't like that. And the reason Claire didn't say is because she couldn't say. It wasn't because she was trying to connive anything. She just really wanted to get home, in the beginning. And she couldn't explain it to people. But she never came across as having a manipulation in anything. She had genuineness about her. And I don't get that from Ian Maranthus. I know some people like her. I am still very out on her. So we open this storyline. It wasn't the open, but it's this storyline with Savannah and everything, with William teleporting back. We teleported there last week. We teleported back this week. And we have a scene with him talking to John and telling John his suspicions, which was a very great, snappy scene. You really see John's frustrations are still with him, and him trying to get him to think of sense and trying to get him to see reason. And William insisting, no, something is not right here. I know something is wrong. And when he explains about the little soldier, John's like, so you think that Ben's really alive and missing because you didn't have your toy soldier? William is just like, son of a bitch, don't mock me. I'm serious. And it was just a really good scene. I like that whole scene. And he's like, I knew you wouldn't understand. And then it goes to drink, and, John pulls the drink out of his hand and is like, you need purpose. You need to have, and he tries to talk to him about going and talking to the person that was Ben's commander at the party. So that's kind of where we leave, and he's apparently going to go to this party. The next scene we get, he's changing for said party. And Amaranthus just walks on in like the husband. I mean, who does that? Why is she walking in and barging into a man's room, not knocking first? I mean, she just owns the joint, and she's just going to barge into his room without even knocking. I kind of thought that was brazen to do. And of course, he is naked from the hand, which we appreciate, us females that watch. But he's no shirt. And she's just like, whoa, she got to get that look. And he goes and he puts his shirt on. He turns around. She says, I made this vest for Ben. And she says, you're about the same size. Why don't you try it on? Now, this is different than the book. Because in the book, she didn't make the best vest for Ben. She made it specifically for him, for William. And they changed that in the show, that she made it for Ben. And now she's, since Ben's not here, I think you are about the same size. You try it on. And then she gets all feely with his back. And he senses it. He senses it's not the normal, chaste way of helping him on the vest. She's going with the rubbies on the back. And he kind of turns around because he's uncomfortable with that. And I thought, you are so not acting appropriately. But anyway, I think all of that, though, has almost like a double meaning. I think that's why they changed it, because they wanted to kind of say, it's almost like she had her sights set on Ben, okay? And Ben was going to take care of everything, in her life or whatever. She was hitching her wagon onto this rich Duke heir, or whatever. But now, that's out of the picture. You're about the same size, meaning you're also of nobility. You're also wealthy, This is what I'm saying. It kind of plays a double play. Let's see how it fits. And she puts it on just right. So it kind of feels like they're playing on this idea that he's going to be her new substitute for what Ben couldn't do because he decided to go and be an American and give up his title and stuff. So maybe you'll fit this thing that I'm going to do. Oh yes, it fits you just right. So I kind of think that was play on things. In the process, he's like, it's the most fanciful vest I've ever owned. And she said, it's not fanciful. And she starts to explain that all these bugs are appropriate. It's all from the book, that line. All the bugs are in their proper proportions and colors and, whatever. I did get a little fanciful with the eyes being red. So I don't know. I mean, she explains her family history. She explains how she got her name, Amaranthus. And we got the pigweed. I was like, yeah, let's start calling her pigweed. And so I don't know. I feel like because they put that in, I don't know if they're going to lean into the connection with Master Raymond in that, or if they're going to lean into that she is the daughter of a different time traveler. And that's why she has they have all of this botany and naturalist background and all of that. I do feel like they're going to somehow make her part of a time traveler thing, either with the bad group, the little cabal of Richardson and all that, or option B, a good group that she's, a real time traveler. But then what's her purpose? If she's a real time traveler and she's just falling in love with Wayne, what was the purpose of the whole thing? Like, what was she doing? Was she really in love with Ben? Is she just going to be out of love with Ben, in love with William naturally, like for real? It just, I don't know. I just can't. I hope it doesn't go that way because I really don't like her. But I could see how they could play it that way and make it like this end that his son is kind of following in his footsteps, falling in love with a time traveler. So I could see how that could work too, but I don't like it. Yeah, it's like you'll do. Exactly. Veronica. Okay, so Veronica said he isn't the same size. You know what? I went back because I wanted to check that because the Greys are not usually big, tall, muscular people. So I went back to that scene with the three guys, and he does like he's the same height and kind of shape a little bit of William in that. Now, of course, he's in a uniform and all that, so it's hard to tell exactly. But he was the same height and the same basic breadth of shoulder and stuff in that scene, even though the other brother is real shrimpy. Ben does look the right size. So I think they circled that a little bit. I saw that as well. So I think that whole thing of it being Ben's and now let me try it on you is kind of a symbol of what her intentions are. Her intentions was to get Ben in her grasp, and that didn't work out as what she planned because he's foolishly letting go his titles and stuff. So now I'm going to try it out on you. I kind of feel like that's what it's doing. What do you guys think? Do you think they're going to go into, first of all, do you think Master Raymond is going to come in as related to her? Because he is supposed to come in somewhere, So do you think he's going to come in as being related to her? And number two, do you think it's going to turn out that she's really a good person and she's going to fall really in love with William and they're just going to be happy ever after and she's going to be this time traveler like Claire was a time traveler, falling in love with William like Claire fell in love with Jamie, even though it wasn't what she intended, just like it wasn't what Claire got. Like, are they going to do that? Or option B, do you think they're going to make her a time traveler but involved in the whole thing with the Greys? Like, that's why she went for Ben. Now, she's kind of insinuating herself with William. Is it going to connect in that way with the Greys and the plot against the Greys and all of that stuff? Or do you think she's not a time traveler at all and she's just, I mean, there's definitely something to her. They're going to do something with her because they're making her too mysterious for it not to mean anything. Could Amaranthus be related to Hal's Mini? That was another theory because there's been a couple theories proposed around Amaranthus. One was that she's connected to Master Raymond. Not theories I've seen with the show, but theories from reading the books. One is that her father, because of the bookseller thing, she's connected in some way with Minnie and all of those people. But in that case, and plus in the book, he's actually working with them. Remember, Watersweet, he's actually somehow helping Dottie. I haven't read it in a while, but Dottie and Hen, they all knew him. And then he's like, I thought he was dead. And he's like, well, that's what he wants people to think. Denny says in that big confrontation scene, which makes like he's involved with this whole thing behind the scenes. So he is around, but I don't know if they're going to get into that with the show. But that is a legitimate theory in the book. that somehow she's connected with Minnie's father. Not to be pedantic, but the vest was tight on William. I noticed a difference in fit when Lord John Grey in a perfectly fitted vest and when William is in Ben's. That vest was something else, man. The costume people outdid themselves with that. It was perfect as far as the way it was embroidered and stuff. Not the fit, I'm saying, but the way it was embroidered. I like Master Raymond, so I don't want him related to A. I think she's part of Richardson's plot with the Greys. I kind of do too. Only thing that makes me nervous about it is when we got those leaked photos of when they bring Lord John back to his house. You see Amaranthus there with William, and that's got to be like Ep 9 or 10 because he's rescued and being brought home, and she's still there talking and walking around with William. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if that means that she's cleared and now she's in with him or whatever. I'm not sure. Is it okay to mention daily lines from Blessing here? Well, here's the thing, Mary. Now, I'd rather not because we usually post them in the group, but not everybody wants to read them. So I don't want to do that. But understand, she said that nothing is what she wrote in book 10. She said none of her plans in book 10 ended up in the series. So I don't know if it's really going to have a lot to do with it. Vicky says, no, I think Master Raymond is going to come on the show as a flashback with Roger for the Blue Light story. Roger can tell Claire about it. When we never saw that, you mean? Oh, I don't know about that. Like he ended up helping his throat, you mean? I don't think they touched that. But I do think it's a possibility that when the things happen with Jamie and he dies, maybe somehow he guides Claire and guides Jamie in this joint healing of him or something. Maybe he's somewhere in the blue. So that could be. Or it could be a flashback of talking to Fanny and her talking about him. And when she talks about it, we get a flashback of him with her mother or something. Okay, so then we get this party. And at the party, first we see William talks to Leslie, okay, this commander, to get any more info. And he's very polite. He's very charming in the way that he's talking to him. Like you can really see that when William has to be charming, he knows exactly how to be charming to anybody. And he's just trying to talk to him and find out, have you heard anything else? And then the guy turns around and they've really kind of fused a few things in there. So this guy turns around, they give him the lines of the guy that wanted to investigate, how prisoners are treated or whatever. And it's apparently him. And he wants to know if he can, since he was at the encampment, can he talk to his adjutant? And he says, yeah. And then he said, I did already talk to your father about his experience. And that brought up this whole conversation of Ellesmere. And now a couple things happened in this episode that I was surprised they're even putting in the story. You know what I mean? And that was one of them. I thought, why is it really that important that we had to have that he has to know that Lord John knew Jamie from being his prisoner? Like, why is that going to matter at this point? You know what I mean? I didn't think it was that earth-shattering that it needed to be included, but maybe it will be in the end when they have the reunion and things are put on the table. Maybe it'll come out, I don't know. But you could definitely see that William's wheels were turning and he's starting to connect that dot when the guy was telling him, oh, it was about 20, 25 years ago. It was a Scottish prison. He's connecting the dot. That must be how he arranged for him to be at Hellwater somehow. But I mean, I didn't think it was that big of a reveal to have a whole scene dedicated around it like that. Then we get the whole Percy thing. So that whole thing surprised me as well, okay? Because Percy comes in, and then this is kind of like fusing together about 3 different incidences with Percy in this scene. Because one, like this happened over basically 2 books, the things that transpire in this scene with Percy. And Percy's being all aggressive, with the hand on the leg. John's getting very perturbed and he keeps throwing his hand off. And I like the way they filmed that too, because you saw William kind of give him a look, because now he has in his mind when he just heard about the Ardsmere thing, and he starts to make his way over to the chair, and then all of a sudden you get a different angle of somebody sitting in the chair, and when John looks up, it ends up being Percy. So I thought that was done well, the way they filmed it. But he has this little tete-a-tete with him, and he's grabbing his leg, and I'm going, oh my God, I really don't like the show Percy. And part of me is hoping that if they do the show, that they don't use show Percy here as the Percy with John in the spinoff, because he's really not giving me Percy vibes at all. He's not book Percy. But anyway, he's starting to grab John's leg, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I had the same question. What is he doing there? It wasn't like the thing in the book where there was a party and there's different people from different places at this party. That's this soiree of Fleury, or whatever the hell her name was, Madame Fleury, that was having this little soiree, and he was there with other people, and he was supposed to be like a dignitary from France. This was all the military brass only at this luncheon. Everybody was in red uniforms practically, except for William and Percy. And I'm thinking, how did you even get an invite to this? You know what I mean? Why are you there? Isn't everybody wondering who the hell he is? He's not there in any way. Like, who is he? And how did he get invited to this thing? So it's kind of felt like he just got thrown in there, and there's no explanation of that, which I found was strange. And then as he's talking, and he starts to ask for Claudel Fraser, and he brings that whole thing in, that threw me for a major loop, because I thought, holy shit, they're getting into that? I did not think they were getting into that, because they ain't got no time for that at this point. I was shocked that he is now aggressively doing this Claudel Fraser, I need to reach him, blah, blah, blah storyline. It just feels like, when are they going to have time to do all this? It's so much. I just don't understand. I guess they're going to connect it to the fire in some way, maybe. But I was really shocked about that. I really did not expect them to get into the whole comp. And does that mean we're going to get the comps? Is he going to make a surprise appearance by the end? I don't even know what to think now, because I did not expect him to be in it. I did not expect that storyline to be explored, because it's just too time consuming with everything else they have to do. So were you guys shocked about that? About him talking about the Claudel Fraser search and I need to reach him and all that stuff? I was surprised. A big, big, big surprise about that. And I just feel like they should have just left that alone. Unless it's really intricately tied into everything else, they should have left that alone. Okay. I like Percy coming to the party with John. We'll get a bit of Percy with Fergus and Roger. I want to hear. Do you think we're going to get that scene with Fergus and Roger together? I want to hear Fergus tell Jamie that he thinks of Jamie as his father no matter what. I don't know if we're going to get all that. I think the Claudel Fraser storyline will be condensed to a very small but important part of the story. I don't know. I just don't see. I can't believe they put that in. Since we don't know how they'll end it, we really don't know how much they still have to do. But we know some things that they're going to have to finish and do. They're going to have to do Kings Mountain. They're going to have to do the siege of Savannah. They're going to have to do the bit with the battle on the ridge. They're going to have to do the kidnapping and rescue of John. So, I mean, there's a lot that has to get done. You know what I mean? Okay. So I thought that was a good scene. I like seeing another side of John, him discomforted in that situation. Okay. So back at home, William comes around. He's about to go up the stairs to bring her this jacket. Now, and she comes running down and she's like, ew, like she thinks she's getting a present. Ew, all happy and starts to unwrap presents, and he's like, no, it's not that kind of present. She's just like, and she starts to open it, and then she looks shocked. Like, what the hell is this? And he says, I went to Middlebrook and Cammix, got Ben's things for you. I thought, Trevor would want to have them someday. Yeah, he would. Let me put this away. She goes to put it away. And I want to just talk about something. You remember last episode when he got that stuff? There was a little black book on top of the things that he took with it all. And he kind of thumbed it real quick like this, but didn't look at it. That book is the common sense book that ends up being the thing that he read that turned him, all that stuff. That's a common sense book, that black book. So you're telling me nobody has read this common sense? While William was teleporting his 700 miles back to Savannah, he never looked at the book that was in his possession, of Ben's possession, the last thing that he has. He has this uniform and he has this book. And the book is Common Sense, which is a very rebel book. Okay. It spurred the sentiment for the revolution. And so he has this book that would clearly say, why would Ben have this book? And nobody's looking at it yet. Nobody's, John didn't look at it. William didn't look at it. Nobody's looking at it. It seems strange. Now, Diana says it's going to come into play later. But to me, I can't imagine it would have been, I would be looking at that book immediately. If it was me and I was wondering what happened, I'd be like, okay, this is the last thing he was looking at. Maybe this has some clue in it. I would have looked at the book. So I think it's just plot convenience that they haven't looked at this book, especially with it being what it is. So I'll just say that. I mean, right now, not everybody realizes it's that book. But when you do realize it's that book, it's going to be that, why didn't anybody read this? Why did nobody look at this book? We had it before this, you know what I mean? So I just think it's going to kind of be a want-want situation. So Amarantha says, I'm going to go put this away. And he follows her up there and she puts it in these two drawers that are like filled with apparently Ben stuff. And he spies the tin soldier, General Rulon, is in there. And he's like, can I see it? And also in there, because I freeze framed it and I looked at the other stuff in there, there's a whole pile of letters from Ben to Amaranthus. And I froze to read the one that I could read. And it's like pouring with love. How he's never felt like this before with anybody. He was totally sunken in love with her based on what I read in the letter. It was not like just, a convenience or he thought she was hot or he was like, every moment I think of you, blah, 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 blah. So he was hook, line, sinker into her. And now we get this third play of this little General Rulon. And I'm wondering what that means to the story for William. Do you think him seeing that and then her saying before he gave it to me, before he went on this final raid to give to the baby, apparently she was pregnant with the baby when he went, which I don't think that was the case. Was that, I think she had the baby already. I'm not sure. But anyway, do you think that means now that William is no longer going to think he was alive because now this thing has showed up? And so that's not missing now. And so therefore, what he was holding hope on to is now not there, not a thing, because it's here. And there's an explanation why it wasn't in his pocket. Like, is that going to be enough for William now? If not, then what was the whole point of the soldier thing? Let me know what you guys think. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing all kinds of comments here. Let me see. I am not shocked about anything, but I was surprised and intrigued because we don't really know how much different stories are and how important they are tied together. Yeah, I really did not expect. Matter of fact, I think that Chelsea and I, when we did our show, we talked about that. Do we think we're going to include this? Is this going to be in the show? Is that going to be in the show? And we both said, yeah, and I ain't going to get into all that, the search for Claudel Fraser. And plus, they had said if it didn't have anything to do with Jamie and Claire, they weren't going to include it. And that felt like it was too far removed from them to include. So I thought that was strange. I hope they have longer ups as the season goes. Yeah, I hope so too. Terry says, if the show potentially has Fergus perish in the fire instead of Omri Christian, maybe Percy will bring news of an inheritance to Marsley. And then she and her children will not have to worry about money without Fergus. Yeah, but see that? Well, and then Germaine would be targeted because Germaine would then be the heir. But at the same time, I really don't feel like it's Fergus that dies in that fire. I really don't. And we know now that coffin was not Amy's coffin because we're past Amy. So it definitely is whoever dies in the fire. And that coffin didn't look big enough for Fergus. So I really don't think it's him. But we'll see. I think it's going to be either Henri Christian or Germaine. Carrie thinks that the Comte may end up rescuing Fergus from the fire. Wow. Now that would be a move. It would be so cool if they brought back. That would be like, whoa, because they think he's dead. Like all these people that are supposed to be dead are coming back. I think Amaranthus knows Ben is. Oh, yeah, she definitely knows Ben is alive. I mean, if they go according to the book, in the book she did, they made this whole plan together. Well, she made the plan and talked him into it to fake his death so that Trevor wouldn't lose his inheritance. Remember, that's the only reason he did it was her idea. So that's why I don't like her, because she claims to really have loved Ben. But when Ben turned, She didn't stand by him. She wasn't like Claire, when Claire, like people that try to compare her to Claire. No, because when Jamie was going to do the thing with River Run, right? And that was presented to him. Claire, book Claire, as much as she didn't want to be part of slavery, as much as she was against owning slaves, if this is what he felt he had to do, she would deal with it because she said, "Whither thou go, I'll go," and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, I'm with you, and whatever that takes us, we're together in it. I'll go and stand by your side, whatever you decide. That's for what love does, for better, for worse, and all that stuff. But she, as soon as his plans was going to affect her pocket and her son's inheritance of being a duke or whatever, boom, she was gone. We got to fake your death. But I don't want somebody like that with William. You know what I mean? I want somebody that will be with him if he's a poverty-stricken fool or if he's as rich as Croesus or whatever. You know what I mean? I want somebody that loves him the way Claire loves Jamie, that would go through anything with him. You know what I mean? And I just feel like she's not that kind of person. So that's why I don't like her. I mean, if I thought she was that kind of person, maybe I'd feel different, but she's not. So, time traveler or not, she's not being caring. And she was ready to just, when he wasn't stepping in the way she wanted him to step, she was gone, and I don't like that. Anyway, I'll get off my rant. When nobody read Frank's book either. Yeah, but you know what I mean about that? If you're looking for this person who has mysteriously disappeared, someone else is in his grave, and he says, you have his final things, and he's looking for that soldier, but there's an actual book there. That could be a journal, that could be whatever. Will you open it to see what it is and then say, oh, why would he have this? Right away, that would cause more questions. And I mean, I don't believe he traveled all that way, sleeping on the road at night, da 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 da. And this book was never opened and looked at. It doesn't make logical sense to me. Kind of giving succubus vibes from Amaranthus. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. She comes off like, if she's a time traveler, she's of the Galus bent, that uses her seductress qualities to entice men and to kind of get them to do what she wants in her machinations for things. That's what she reminds me of. Lillian says it can't be Fergus in the fire if they're bringing up this Percy stuff. Yeah, he's doing this search. I don't think he's going to die in the fire, because then that would kind of be, why even do it? I don't remember from the book if she knew William wanted to renounce his title. Okay, that's the next thing I want to talk about. This is the end of that section of storyline. He goes up and he tells her that, thank you for the vest. It was a big hit at the party. She says, let's walk and talk. They walk away and they go in the back. As she starts, he says, everybody loved the vest, but I'm afraid that my father was a lowly lord and he doesn't have all of the knowledge that your father and grandfather have about this, whatever. And so she starts, of course, takes the opportunity to start touching all over his chest. This is that. And we get two interesting things. She talks about the bird that, like, if they end up in an egg in a different nest, they'll start to talk and sing the songs of the parents that it grows up with, which is kind of a nod a little bit to his situation, that even though he was of this, he kind of grew up in this noble situation, even though it wasn't what he was born to, and he picked up all of the qualities of that. Then they talk about that Hercules dynasties bug that leads into this whole other conversation about the qualities and then ends up being compared to him. And that's the bug that they showed in the title card. He says, well, that's funny because they don't seem like they're comparable creatures to be on the same animal, And she says, well, they're both large with incredible strength. And he said, yeah, but their stories aren't very interchangeable. One's a giant who's a vile criminal, and the other is a heroic demigod. Now that's kind of like the way he kind of is seeing Jamie. Jamie has the two sides. He has this vile criminal, whatever, traitor, whatever background. And then also he has this demigod, kind of strong, imposing, different kind of vibe. But then she compares it to him as well. He says, is he a contrary person? But she says, you are. And he says, how do you mean? She says, I mean, you don't intend to live your life to please others' expectations, do you? And that was a very great nod back to the wedding speech. If you recall, he almost said those exact things. But what it means to me, the fact that he says, oh, no, I don't, and she kisses him, it also means she's been snooping on his conversation, like listening, overhearing the little back and forth conversations he's having with John, to be privy that he's struggling with his identity and he doesn't know if he wants to take on the stuff that he's owed. She's picking up that he doesn't want his title. And I think that's why she's zeroing in on him and stuff in the show. She had to have overheard that. She wouldn't just know that unless she overheard bits and pieces of his conversations with John to put that together. Little hussy, little spy hussy. You think William looked at that? Well, then if he looked at it, Carrie says, I bet William did look at it. Remember the smile he made when William mentioned treason? I think William is thinking about both sides, perhaps. Yeah, but don't you think if he looked at it after getting Ben's things, he would think, why would Ben have this? That would raise a question to him. I just found it strange. Okay, so then she kisses him. That was also very brazen of her to do. Kisses him and then walks away. Like, let me give you something to think about there, big boy, and walks away. I really don't like her. Anyway, pie hussy, spy hussy. Yes, there you go. Pie hussy and spy hussy. Okay, so then the other side of the story is the Ridge Life side. So first of all, Fanny's scenes were fantastic. Everything she's in, this girl is so good. I really love her. And now I'm like watching interviews from Katrina and stuff, and she was saying too how blown away they were by her acting ability and stuff. So she really is good. I kind of feel like her and Roman were like the standout children actors on the show. They both really were beyond their years in the way that they performed in their roles. But I kind of see her on that level. Like, she is very good. And we opened with a scene with her. And I thought this was we kind of went full circle with the story of these yahoos that were coming and meeting with Cunningham. We kind of opened with that. And then we closed with the end of that whole loop of story where he finds out what they were really up to and what was really going on and everything. So we opened at the trading post and she's looking at this comb. And then she's like, you like it? Think about it. I'm going to go and get our mail. We have mail call, which is another big loop that goes through the whole story. So I thought they did the opening scene really well to have all of these beats in there that end up getting wrapped up by the end. And one of the things I really loved, you get the approach of these guys. So in the book, this is Ben Bridge and Esther Hazy, or the two guys in the book. And they're dead by the end of this episode. So all of that's changed too, because those two guys don't die by the end of the episode. We get them where one is looking at Fanny, and then they're part of the whole battle that happens on the ridge, and then they try to fight each other over Agnes. Like, they have a whole thing with that, but they're dead by the end of this episode. So I thought that was a good adaptation. But anyway, so she says, you want this, let me know, I'm going to go in and get the mail. And this guy starts creeping on her, and she like tells him he's a toad face, and he walks away, and she throws the comb back and turns around, and Brianna senses, immediately picks up the vibe, something happened. Were they bothering you? And so she says, they're soldiers. They think they can just take anything they want, which is a line from a different part they plugged in there, but it worked. And Bree says, well, I want to have a word with them. And she starts to turn around. And I immediately got, like, from this scene that you see Fanny go, no, come on, let's go. And she starts to grab Bree's arm and pull her away. And Bree's like, starts to want to go talk to them. And she goes, no, let's just go. And I felt like in that moment, Fanny was reliving her sister, because Bree kind of looks a little bit like her sister. And I feel like in that moment, she knows, like the last time somebody that's kind of like a sister to her went and tried to defend her, ended up being costing her life. All of this stuff happened. That's how she lost Jane. So she's like, no, let's just go. She's trying to pull her away because she's so fearful of that happening again. Last time she was stood up for, she was to blame for that death she feels. So I thought that was really well done in the way they crafted that. I also like seeing that they're getting closer. So I like that. Anyway, but he was a scumbag, the guy hitting on her. So then we have the mail call thing. Okay. he comes in and throws her thing and says, "You got a letter from your former husband." And you see, he's trying to act like he doesn't care, but he cares. And he's like, "Oh, what did he have to say?" And she says, "Oh, he wants Brianna to come and paint a portrait of his nephew's wife and son." And he goes, "I'll go let her know." He goes, "No, you won't." And it starts off this whole thing from the book. And they really flesh this out from the book in two big scenes of jealous Jamie, which is always fun. I love all the times when they fight. It's always great, their fight moments. And here's another logic problem I had was this letter. Because how does he even know Bree's there to write her this letter? You know what I mean? In the book, she wrote to him saying, "I'm back, da da da," or whatever she said in her letter. And he wrote that back to her. But there was no letter written here saying, "I'm back." So how does he know that she's there to ask her to come and do this thing? That makes sense to me. It felt like a ball was dropped in that he would suddenly know to write her there. The last he heard, she was leaving, wasn't going to be around anymore. So my idea on the whole letter, what they should have did was had John make at the end of the last episode or beginning of this episode or something, show a letter from Bree that he was reading and put down. Then he'd pick it up again and kind of look at it like he's coming up with an idea, and then have that scene. Then you would know that was in retaliation to the letter he got. But it didn't make any sense the way it was in the show. But anyway, so he calls her over and she's like, "Excuse me, would you like to rephrase that?" And they begin to have phase one of their little knockdown drag out fight. And he played this really well. Sam did. The facial expressions and everything, and so did Claire. But Claire, in the book, in these two scenes, she was a lot more pissed off and irritated and getting really ragey with him in some of those scenes. In the show, she was more like exasperated. And then he said, "Didn't I tell you I wasn't going to forget about this?" "Yes, you did." And she kind of has like this eye rolly vibe, instead of her ragey vibe. And so that was a little bit different. They toned her down. At the end of the little first argument, she said, "You can't stay mad at John because it's going to alienate William." And he says, "Damn, William." And he storms out. And Fanny is there. And she comes in and she said, "You probably shouldn't have told him." This is all in the book too. And she's told him what? I know what swived means. Which all of that was really toned down. He was a lot more brutal with it in the book. He was less brutal in the show than he was in the book. I think people would have really hated him if they would have went as far as he did in the book. Fanny says to Claire she shouldn't have told him. And she's afraid that she's going to be having to go back now because if he's mad at William made him take me. He's not going to want to keep me here. She's so afraid. She's almost afraid to count on it anymore. And that she really can sink herself in to believe this is really going to last. So you see that in her, and I thought that was really well done. But what happens is when she says, "Look, this has nothing to do with William. Don't worry about that. Nothing's going to happen." She gives her a hug and all of that. That's where we cut back to the scene with John and William, in the show. So in that way, they're doing the transitions fairly well because they're trying to at least make it where William came up in the conversation or John came up in the conversation, and then they flip over to it. And that was it was like subjective in that way, but it wasn't as, they really need to start merging these lines together more frequently, which I think they're going to do in this upcoming episode. So that was a really sweet scene. I'm really loving the relationship building between Claire and Fanny as well. It's just very beautiful to see because, we never got to see her as a mother. I said this last time, but I really love that. So then we have Bree and Claire with their little girl talk scene. I saw a couple of people didn't like this. Most people did. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. And a lot of people loved Bree in it, but I loved Claire in it. I mean, I loved them both, but I loved Claire in it because of the way her facial expressions, it's almost like Like she's allowing herself to see the craziness of the situation when she's with Bree and can kind of laugh about it because she can never do that. In front of Jamie, she can't show that she's at all amused by the whole thing. But now it's hindsight, they're back together. Jamie's alive, and now she can it's almost like once you're through something, you'll look back on it and laugh. But she can't do that because of Jamie having a fit. But with Bree, you can kind of see her well. And then she goes, oh, and she's like, oh, well, it's only once. and you see her making the faces, and she's like, Mama. And she just kind of makes this like little quirky smile on her face. Like she's a little embarrassed, but at the same time, she knows that it's amusing to her daughter, and she's kind of laughing with her, like that adult girls can talk about these things. And it was just really cute. And then when she says, I don't have to call him dad now, do I? And she gives her the look. She goes, don't joke like that about it with your father. Because she's almost like she recognizes the joke of it and laughs. But she's like, don't say that around your father. It was so real mother-daughter, like the way they talk and they hide things from the father because he wouldn't know how to handle it. And it just, I really loved it. It felt very real. As real a situation like that's going to be. So apparently off screen, Bree told Jamie about the whole thing with the soldiers, and he comes in to visit Cunningham. And he says, these men came to visit you and they bother Fanny, and she said they're soldiers. And he tells him that they served with his son and brought his things, his pistol and his musket. And Jamie examines the pistol. Now, I didn't notice it at first, but I rewatched it and noticed it. In that scene, in that first scene, you see Jamie looking at the musket, and he kind of is like steady looking at it. And you see Cunningham is looking at it. His eyes are a little shifty. He's a little bit like wants to get it back in hands. And when I first saw that, I thought it was because he wanted his son's things with him. You know what I mean? I didn't like him handling it. But it's because he had this code thing in there. They were bringing him that and said, arms are coming, and if any messages will be with this code, and they had given him that. But the thing is, too, what didn't make sense about it was if the guy, and it should have been a question, if the guy, according to his story, was shot and killed 5 feet away from him on the same field that he was on his last battle, why didn't he already take his son's things? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't he have taken it already? Why would he need it be brought to him if they were on the same field when he died? So that didn't make a lot of sense either, but okay. So he looks at the musket, and you could see Jamie had like something didn't feel right, and then he was noticing that he was nervous, but he let it go. And he said, I will not tolerate any actions that threaten the ridge or its settlers. And that was that. He said, of course not, blah, blah, blah. So they go. And I mean, I thought that was good. I thought all the scenes with Cunningham were really good. Then we get the scene with Roger, Bree, and Jamie and Claire. And, they want to take John's offer. Jamie's pissed. No, I will not have it. It's too dangerous. I will not allow it. How are you going to even get there? You'll probably be attacked and all your stuff be taken before you're even there. Oh, well, we got a safe passage letter from John that he sent with his letter. And if you check out Jamie's facial expression when she says that, he just goes, like, he makes this face like, oh yeah, of course, John, provided all the answers to keep you safe. And I also like the note too when she said you can't love somebody if you won't forgive them. When that note happened, it really is a strike on the conversation he had with Roger the week before. Remember I told you it sets up that he can't forgive John, and it had like a multi-purpose in that. So you can see that kind of resonating in this as well. He storms out, I'm not going to have it. He goes in the other room. And that is literally the only, now we did get a couple scenes with Bree because we got her in the beginning with Fanny, and we got her in the conversation with Claire. But like Roger, we got that scene like ahead of time, that little scene over wanting to go and take the sour, going to Savannah. We got that as like a pre scene, before the show aired. That's the only scene Roger talks in, like literally. Roger has no other purpose in the whole episode. And I'm getting annoyed. Why are we not getting more Roger? And I'm praying, thank you. I'm praying. I'm almost thankful that they're leaving and they're going to Savannah because maybe they'll actually get more play and they'll get more room to talk. You know, I'm getting annoyed. I feel like Roger is not getting enough time. We're never getting the story about him meeting the father, all the stuff he experienced. None of that's getting translated to anybody or talked about. And I'm kind of annoyed with that. He should have more weight in the story. And maybe it's because they want to keep it very centralized. But that story happened. You met his father. I think that warrants a conversation. You know what I mean? I think that warrants something. And Jamie's awe of that happened. And I thought that would, I actually was expecting it in this episode because it didn't happen in the last episode. I thought it would come up in this episode with the whole family tree title. I thought, oh, this is probably when he's going to mention that he met his father, or his father was very proud of him, or whatever he says. But never came about. And I'm just annoyed. I feel like I'm actually glad they're leaving because at least then we might get some actual scenes with him, you know? And it's a shame that I got to think like that. But that's the way it's been. And it feels like because they're cramming so much in every episode. And some of these things that happened in this episode are momentous things that are not getting their chance to breathe and have space. You know, you almost feel like so much is happening. The whole reveal of the Cunningham thing, the whole reveal of the blue light thing, the whole, like these are big things. And they need to kind of resonate with people a little bit. It's a big deal. And if you don't make it a big deal on the show, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal if you don't give it time. So we have the big blow up number 2 with Claire and Jamie in the bedroom. It was definitely toned down from the book. The book was a lot more ripping each other to shreds, and her coming back at him coming back at her, him kind of speaking vulgarly to her speaking vulgarly back, you know, and everything else. So there was a lot of like, it got toned down from what it was, but I still think it was well done. Yes, Rima, I feel like it's very rushed. Let me see what you guys are saying before I get into comic relief with Bree and Claire. There was a lot of good comical bits, even when the fight, you know. And Jamie and Claire, all of their face acting in this episode, well, all together has been really good. Jamie had a big range of emotional bits, his awe at the healing thing, to and the blue light thing, to his anger, to his sarcasm, to his being Lord and Master, to him like dealing with Cunningham, talking to Cleveland, to the, you know, in anger and in, no, I'm the man, the king of my castle mode, and then, you know, the whole discovery with Cunningham. There was a lot of range. The beautiful tender moment with Fanny, you know, at the cairn. So there was just a lot of really beautiful, really rangy emotional beats for Sam, and I think he did a great job in this episode. So I like certain things in that scene. I like certain positioning, like when you saw when they both sat down on the bed, he was like sitting in the bed facing that way. She was sitting on the bed facing that way. That was like a very good shot to show them kind of when separated from each other. Let's see how he says, and I think this was important. They talk about how this is still bothering him and eating him up with Lord John. And he says, I swear I'll put this thing out of my head. And mostly I manage, but then out of the blue, we get this letter from him and it all comes back again. And how can I, you know, stand having him in the bed with us or whatever? And she says, I never thought it, no, and all that stuff. The whole argument comes about. And so it was very good. And then she said, here's where it dropped for me, was when we get to the sex part. It ends in sex. She says, why don't you leave that to me? And then, you know, she goes and we, first of all, we get into the horse riding pose that we're always in anymore, it seems like, when they have sex, which I can't stand. Okay. It's like it's getting old and I'm kind of tired of it. So I hope that they change that up. You know, Bree and Roger may not have the passion that Jamie and Claire have, but at least they have more interesting sex. You know, I feel like we're not getting any interesting sex anymore with Jamie and Claire. And even Diana talked about it, how they always seem to go for this pose where it looks like she's riding a horse in a trot. They're bouncing up and down like this, phasing. And so I didn't like that. But the other thing I didn't really like about it was the bite part. Okay. She bites him on the cheek. Now, in the book, she bit him on the nipple through his shirt. Okay. Now, why do I care about that? Because she does this line at the end where she says, "Did I break the skin?" As he says, "You do every time you're with me," or whatever he says, right? That's from the book. But it made no sense on the show because she's looking right on his face. You know what I mean? And she bit him on his face. She can see she didn't break no skin. It wouldn't have come up that way. In the book, he was still in his shirt and she touched his nipple like through the shirt and she said, "Did I break the skin?" It made sense to say that. It didn't make sense to say it in the show. So I thought that was a little illogical. Didn't fit with her looking in his face and saying that. You know what I mean? Although I can see why they wanted the line because it was a nice line from him, but didn't make a lot of logical sense. Okay, well, what did you guys think of the sex scene? Did you like it? Did it feel kind of humdrum to you? I mean, I liked it. It was better than the other one. The other thing I didn't like about it is now we've had back-to-back sex scenes, and both of them have been to diffuse his jealousy over another person. Like, it hasn't been just them being together. It's been like a reclaiming from another husband reason for the sex. You know what I mean? So I hope we actually get some beautiful time with just them without all of that. I don't like that everything's in such close proximity to each other. Like that's what I didn't like. That we got this scene where he is exterminating his demons with Lord John after the episode before in close proximity where he's trying to expunge, Frank's interference in their life. You know what I mean? It kind of felt like too much of that idea back to back for me. But before I get to the next morning, let me just see what you guys are saying. Loved her faces. We have not had a good Jamie and Claire fight in a while. Yeah, I love the fight. I love them fight. I love their knockdown, drag out fights. They always have the best fights. Like one of my favorite episodes of all time is The Reckoning because I love the fight there by the river. So I always love that. I just felt like, and I like the fight here, and I'm almost glad that they toned it down a little bit because I don't think that the show people could handle it if it was as brutal as it was in the book, where he was said like as much nasty shit to her that he did and her back. And I think it would have bothered people. They would have been like, "How dare he say that to her?" Blah blah blah. So I can see why they toned it back a little to not make Jamie look too bad. So I liked it, but I just didn't like the sex of it. I didn't like the way it's always the same. I didn't like the way that line didn't land right to me because it didn't make sense with where she bit him in the show, all of that. Sophie has grown as an actress. She has. Yes, she has. I can relate to Jamie. She may not have cheated on Jamie, but that episode with John kind of sullied her pure wifey. I think they are doing a lot of parallels with season one of this season, but with a new growth. So maybe that's why the fight was more toned down and with more listening to each other. So you're thinking it's kind of like that knockdown drag out they had. And it ends with when he said, "You're tearing my guts out, Claire." And then when she said, "Did I break the skin?" And he said, "You do every time, you're with me," or something like that. It kind of had a similar vibe. So I see what you're saying. I mean, I like the line, the great line. I just didn't like it because it didn't make sense with what she did and that she's now looking right in his face and saying that. It didn't make sense. I like things to make sense. Vicky agrees we need longer episodes so these stories can breathe. It especially got bad, I think. Where I really felt it was toward the end how we went from the blue light stuff right into this whole thing with the guns and all of that stuff. It just felt like very separate things that are both big things but need their time to resonate. You know what I mean? I did love it though, but Roger not knowing about American history was ridiculous. I always feel they did do Roger dirty. Well, it's true though that I mean, when you're a historian, like that's your whole thing. You're a historian. You do have the areas of focus. There's a lot of areas of focus in history, and especially because he isn't an American, he probably focused on like some deep part of English history, or world history or whatever. He probably didn't focus on all the individual battles and stuff of the revolution. So I can understand that. And plus it's convenient that he doesn't know everything or else it would be too easy. I'm really upset about Roger. I hope that they give him a lot more once he gets to Savannah. the only thing I can hope for, because I just feel like they're not utilizing him enough. New positions, right, Rima? I mean, it feels like, because that's the easy way to hide stuff, is when the woman's on top in that little straddle position. So it's easy to kind of, like, feign sex that way. But it just feels like we're getting that all the time. And enough already. And even Diana said it. I'll read you what she said. I saved some of the Diana deeds to share with you guys. She said, the main thing I noticed from that point where the intimacy coordinator arrived, all sex scenes at least start with the woman sitting upright on top of the man, many of them proceeding to something akin to a posting trot in slow motion. I mean, the participants are mostly naked, but the effect is not erotic. She said, aggravated by the fact that most such scenes don't involve dialogue, where most of the early scenes did from the books. I mean, there is surely a difference between political exploitation of females and simple acknowledgement of how sex actually works for most people. So she's on board that the scenes have gotten, since the intimacy coordinator got on set, they've gotten a little less erotic. Okay, so back to what I was saying here. So at that point, they get to the porch the next morning, and she's reading the book, and he's like jokes about, we go to bed fighting about your third husband, and we wake up to you reading about your first husband. And she's like, good thing I'm only in love with my second husband. And I thought that was cute. That wasn't a line written by Diana, but I thought it was a nice little line. And I love Jamie's shirt in this scene. Isn't his shirt gorgeous in this scene? It's like this pale blue, and it has like those little silk kind of threadings in it, kind of where it's like gets bunched up. I can't remember what you call it, where it gets like that bumpy texture. One of you guys that carry, what am I talking about? That material that has a little bumpy texture. It's like real soft, but it gorgeous. I love Jamie in blue. Anytime you put Jamie in blue, I'm happy, And they're both in blue. Note, like she's wearing her blue skirt and her blue like striped shirt. He's wearing that blue shirt, and we're about to get the blue light thing coming in. So I kind of feel like that was a nod to it. And they discuss the motivation of Frank's book. And Claire references what she said to BJR. And she says, I said that, told him the date of his death because it was the only weapon I had to torture him with. I was so upset at that time. I wanted to make him have pain for what he was doing. And it was the only thing I could do to make him suffer and torture him. That's why I did it. So he says, you think Frank is trying to torture you? And he said, what you told BJR was real, even though you were torturing him with it. It was the real truth of the story. So she says, I don't know. She says, maybe, for not forgetting about you when I went back with him, or for not letting you go. I just don't know what's real anymore. And that's what's worrying me. As she goes back inside, and suddenly Jamie hears the Frank BJR voice in his head saying, it's real. In your heart, what's written is the truth. Now, I could have went without that one. I think they're overdoing the Frank VO already. It seems like they are. I would have, we got it twice, I think, in this episode. And I'm just hoping it's not going to be multiple times in every episode and ending every episode like it is so far, because it can be overdone. It can be kind of redundant and become trite and lose its power in the episode. So I hope they start using a more deft hand with that. We didn't need that one. We could have just went with the one at the end. I mean, I'm liking it. I was the one that asked to have it, but I don't want them to overdo it. Okay, so now we get this unexpected visitor to the ridge, and this young black girl comes in. She looks like she's about 14, about the same age as Fanny. In the book, it was Cloudtree, and they were an indigenous family. And in the show, it's Whitaker, and they're a black family. Why do you think they changed it from a Native American to a black family? So let me know what you guys think on that. I'm kind of thinking that, first of all, it might have been hard to get babies that would look like they're indigenous babies. It might have been hard to get people over there. But I also think that they're trying to weave in why the guy feels like he doesn't want to be in their debt. So he maybe comes back to warn them of something he heard, because they brought in the race thing. Like he doesn't want to be in his debt for anything. And so he wants to be square in some way. So he's warning him, because you helped my wife, I'm going to give you this heads up. It could be a way they're going to pull in the race thing, the slavery thing, because that's one of the motivations apparently of Richardson and stuff. So maybe that's somehow being brought in through them. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? They often make changes, but don't change the lines. Yes, exactly. Yeah, the bite made no sense in the show. Okay, you all are with me on that. I thought that was a callback to season one when he gave her the pearls. What was the callback to season one when he gave her the pearls? Lori says she hates their sex scenes. They're so abrupt, no foreplay, her on top. They climax together, which almost never happens in real life. Totally unrealistic.
Thank you.
Tom's in the background going, thank you. Because he even says that. He's like, and I'm like, Tom, you realize they can't spend 25 minutes on a sex scene to make it like last as, but I understand the time aspect of it too. But still, you could do something, a little kissing, something. I feel like ever since she got married and had a baby, I feel like the sex scenes have gotten less because of that. Part of me thinks that. Just my speculation. He does comment on having issues with her first and third husband. Lisa says, typical Outlander sex, no foreplay, doesn't last long. Everybody climaxes every time, and they always do it simultaneously. Veronica says, even hearing he spread your leg and swived you was grating. And it was even worse in the book, like that whole bit. He was really vulgar. He was basically talking to her like she was being some kind of hoe, you know? We need more episodes. Is there going to be a Ulysses tie-in coming? I don't think so, because Ulysses of the show was not Ulysses of the book. They made him a very likable, wonderful character. And I think they did it so that people wouldn't say, you're making the black guy a bad guy thing, to be more politically correct in that. So I think that's why they did it. And I remember thinking, oh, I guess they're not going to do dull stuff that happens with him at the end because they've set him up. You know, John helped him get away. So regarding the Claire bite, didn't make sense. Also looked to me that they did add Jamie's scar from, yeah, I noticed that too. I looked for it and you could see the little faded Black Jack Randall brand scar. Yeah, they're very good about the scarring. They always get the one on his hands too, the little lines on his hands from when she had to put his hands back together. You always see like the little faint line across his tops of his fingers and knuckles. They always remember to do that too, which I like. Lisa says, in the books, Roger reads up on the Revolutionary War. He and Brianna do read history books when they're reading the letter, so he's not completely clueless. That's true. You're right. He does. They make him sound like a dummy. Yeah, I just don't like how passive he's been. I said this last week. He just feels like he's just like a little ornament in the room or something. And he's not being, and I thought we were going to get more of it because of that preview clip that they released, but that was all he was in. So it wasn't more, it was just that, you know. I agree with everything Diana said. It's probably Lynn and Jamie's shirt. Yeah, it had like that little, I can't remember what you call it, but it's like that silk that gets little bumpy straight things in it that kind of has that raised little bumpy threads that go through it. And take a look at it next time, but I really loved it. It was really pretty. I think Whittaker is going to help Jamie defend himself against Cunningham by warning him. Yeah, that's what that role did, because if you remember in the book, Cloudtree does that. The breathing together reminded me of Tantra practices. Yeah, I think it's the intimacy coordinator, Christine says. Okay. So she sees this girl, Agnes, and she says, you know, her mother's having problems, and they bring her in to the surgery. And I like that the surgery has blue curtains on the surgery, too. That's another nice touch, you know, to kind of, this is where the healing happens. And at first, both babies appear to be stuck. And then we go to the Percy scene at the party, and we come back, and the husband arrives, and he's angry that they're there. And because she's having twins and one stuck, this is a serious situation. So you see Jamie really trying to talk the guy down. Look, we're not going to hurt you. We won't tell anybody you were here. Let my wife help her and all this stuff. First, he agrees. But I like the way that guy played it. And when Jamie starts to encroach his space, you see him kind of lean back and look at him like he's automatically getting defensive almost. And I like that. It played very realistic. They have a very clear distrust of white people in accepting their help. And Jamie assures him she delivers the first baby, it's a boy. Second baby is not breathing. And she tries to revive it. Not. And she brings over to the table and she starts to try to do all the different things. And Jamie starts to realize like it's gone. He says, why don't you give me the baby? She's like, no, I can't. And she holds the baby close to her. And I like the way they did this. They had Raymond echoes his voice about, you know, you have the color of blue all around you, whatever it is. And she had the vision of the the bird thing. And then you see her neck pulsing of her heartbeat. And then you saw her hand and you saw her veins pulsing in her hand with like just a blue, bare blue cast over it. Not all the bright, like it is with Master Raymond, which it makes sense because it's just starting to come in. So it makes sense it would be much fainter, barely there, that type of thing. And she just sits there and she holds this baby. Now, what I didn't like about it that was different than the book, and it's important, is they never had Jamie like holding on to her. Remember in the book, she told Jamie not to let her go. And he didn't. He held on like to her shoulders or whatever while she was holding this baby. And what that was supposed to be was she was channeling his strength to help give her more strength that ended up going into the child. And that ends up becoming important. She does the same thing when she's with Jamie at the end because she has Roger and Ian there and she's kind of helping pulling from their strength as well. Do you know what I mean? It kind of speaks to that as well when we see in the book Roger with McEwen and how he talks about we all were helping him and supporting him in helping Buck or whatever and his heart. So it was kind of like you get the sense that's how it works. And so it was important that she was touching Jamie at the same time, or he was touching her, and they didn't do that in the show. The baby comes back, and it's, they're both kind of shocked. And you almost see the way they played it. Claire looks like she's drained and exhausted. She's shocked, so that makes sense. But she feels like drained a little of her energy. Like that's what it looks like. Also, note when the baby cries. Note when the baby cries, we hear the first notes of the faith theme playing when the baby cries and is alive. So I don't know if that's going to be that they are going to say that baby was somehow revived, because they did play the faith theme in that, if you listen. Okay, so they talk after, and they bring up the topic of faith. Is this what happened possibly with Master Raymond? She explains more in detail her experience with Master Raymond, how she felt this blue light before from him, and it was healing her at the same time. And she talks about it in detail with him. And so she says, could he have done that with the baby? And Jamie says, well, why wouldn't he tell you? And she says, well, he was being hunted. He was arrested. He was banished from France by the king. So are they bringing that into as the reasoning of why he couldn't connect back with her? I'm not sure, but they're laying that in. And then she asked about the color of her hair and over by the window. And he says all the colors of the earth, like in the book. And then he says, but here around your face, it's the color of moonlight. Now, one of the things I read is that they gave Claire three phases of wig. First phase, second phase, third phase. And I think now she's wearing the second phase when she reveals it, and there's more white there. So I think this is her phase 2 wig now that she'll be wearing until probably we get to Kings Mountain. We'll get the phase 3 wig. So they have planned this out. And she's kind of just in shock, like, oh my God, this actually happened. And then we cut right to this cairn scene, which was beautiful. But it kind of felt strange that we're jumping into that with no lead into it. But it was a beautiful scene. But then that scene gets interrupted by shots being fired. And this is what I mean. It felt very jolty from the blue light thing jumping into this scene, which then ends up being quickly interrupted with gunshots. And it felt like maybe we should have ended the episode with the blue light thing. Maybe that would have been better, because then it gives you a chance to kind of think about it and dwell on it. You kind of imagine that between the end of this show, beginning of the next episode, they would have talked about it. It just feels a little too quick for something that was a big thing. I did read Blake's from Marion Blake. I read his knee jerk on the Patreon thing, and he said the same thing. And I barely agree with him on things, but I agree with him on that. It did feel jolty to go from that to that. So they go and we get this beautiful scene with Fanny, which I thought was just so lovely. The way that it was lit and everything with the cairn, it was just beautiful. A really beautiful scene. And then we hear the gunshots. And part of me didn't like that because it just felt too jolty. But then at the same time, it kept reiterating this theme that's been in the show, how things can change on a dime. Things can change in a moment. Just like They were there having happy days, picking berries, and then boom, Amy gets attacked by the bear. Here they are having this beautiful moment with this Karen, and then boom, shots are being fired. And so maybe they're trying to keep reiterating that idea that you never can really just settle into something because something is about to happen all the time. But one of the things I felt like I listened to the thing that Sam posted. Somebody posted a thing, a little speech from Sam, a little interview, and they asked him, how are the fans going to feel about the rest of the season? He said exhausted. And I'm totally understanding what he means by that because it is a little exhausting jumping from all of these big moments to big moment to big moment. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. I have the parade. Yeah. She said that she taps into the little bit of spark of life that was left, that was remaining, that hadn't fizzled totally out and kindled it, basically. I have my own theory on the faith thing, but we'll see how it goes. But there's a lot of theories. It could be that it ends up being connected to this brother in the show, and that Faith was a descendant of him. It could be that it's actually another sibling that Julie and Henry have. It could be that the babies were swapped, like the baby was put aside, assuming that it was dead or dying, and then Master Raymond took that baby, and when they went to bring the baby to her because she was screaming for it, they brought her a different baby. That could be the case. So there's a lot of different things it could be. I don't think that baby that she was holding was revived in any case, because it was too long that she was sitting there holding that baby. So I just don't think that's the case. But that could have been a different baby and not her baby, because Faith, if the actual person Faith, had very dark curly hair, not red hair. So I don't think that baby is the same baby that ends up being Faith, the mother of these two girls. So however they work it out, I don't think that's the case. So I think everybody can just take a breath on that one. Okay, so we hear the shots, and he tells Fanny to stay where she is. Don't move. And I thought, if anything tells you she could be related to Claire, it's the fact that she doesn't listen to him when he tells her not to move. I'm like, okay, maybe she is related to Claire because she doesn't listen. But anyway, so he runs over and we see Cleveland. And I like the way they adapted all of this. Like they really condensed all of this bit with the guns, with the people that came, with him going in to find out the information. All of this was condensed really nicely, I thought. And Cleveland's there, and he's like, "Oh, you arrived just in time to help me string them up." And he's like, "I will not. You know, what do you?" And now this is what bothers me about this scene. The two guys are sitting there dead. Okay, he wants them to help him string them up. They have this whole wagon load of guns. Okay, uh, Fanny comes over. She says, "Oh, that's the two soldiers that was harassing me in the thing. That horrible man." And he says, "Well, you do what you want. I'm taking the guns." And he goes to leave. First of all, he had just told him not to come on his land and do anything in his area. So why is Cleveland even hunting people with guns on his land? Number one. Number two, he ends up killing people on his land and then takes the guns, which that's on his land. Who are you to take shit? You know what I mean? It should be Jamie's guns. So I was annoyed with that he's just letting him dictate what he's going to do. And then Jamie finds this letter in the boot. I thought that was really good. It's talking about all this stuff with the Abies Fraseri tree and all this other stuff. I just was annoyed though. What right does Cleveland have to say, I'm taking the guns, I'm doing this and that? It's your land, dude. I would have said to him, no, you ain't taking the guns. This is my land. I'm keeping them. So now we go back to the trading post, and he confronts Cunningham. He tells him that the two men that were here, they came back, and he says, well, I'll talk to them. He says, I know you won't because they're full of bullet holes and buried. I said, oh, God. He turns around and he says, he sent a letter. You said you didn't have any kin, but apparently this is from your uncle. He says, talked about trees and mentioned 3 or 4 times about arms. And I don't think it has to do with trees or with a man's arm. He looks over and he sees the pistol on the wall. Now, I think in coordination with the earlier thing, it makes sense that he knew there was something up with that pistol when he first grabbed it, because he was looking at it and something didn't seem right with him on it. And he also noticed, I think, how Cunningham was shifty when he was handling the gun. And so then he looks at the gun and he sees that he's kind of looking at where he's looking. And that was like the signal, okay, something is up with this gun. And he takes the gun and he's like, feels light, finds the little code thing. And this is Jamie. Jamie Fraser, who spent a lot of time in France cracking codes and getting through messages and stuff, So he knows exactly what this is all about. He puts it down and he sees that he says, you're right, Mr. The way Cunningham acted in this whole situation, he should have had the fear of God in him, but he did not because he thinks he's invincible. And so he goes and he sits down and he's like, you're right. He said, that's not a letter about trees. I'm imagining it's from my commander, Ferguson. So they've totally lumped in that Cunningham is working for Ferguson, which of course Jamie knows that name. And he says, you're raising a loyalist militia on my land? And he says, you think I'm just going to sit by and stand for it? And he says, will you be surprised while you've been gone? There's a lot more people here that are loyalists than they are to this absentee landlord guy. And what really bothered me is that Jamie's not telling him to go. Like, Jamie leaves. He suggests to Jamie, why don't you fight with us? He says, think about it. And Jamie leaves as if, like, I was surprised Jamie wouldn't say, get your shit and get the frig out now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why he's being allowed to stay there. So that was a little bit like, that's why I said in my thing, I didn't understand something about the ending. It was strange that he's just going to walk away and allow this to continue for now. Instead of demanding he leave immediately. I just, like, now he knows that Cunningham knows that he knows, right? So, like, why give him that advantage now to make secondary plans and to get people together? Like, I would have ushered him right the hell out the door. To get your mother, get your shit, get the hell out. Because in the book, he didn't know ahead. Like, it wasn't all out on the table like that ahead of time until after the thing. That's when it was known that everybody knew this already. You're not surprising anybody with this. But it was played like he didn't know all the way up until the lodge meeting. So now I don't know how that's going to play because now everything's on the table. It's like everything's known. So that was a little strange to me. And it was a little strange that being so that Jamie would just let it go on and operate as if he's just going to leave him there. I guess he figures I'll find out more, see who's in it with him or something, maybe. That's what he's figuring. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. So as he walks away, we get the voiceover. I mean, another thing, Cunningham would already be dead if it wasn't for Jamie intervening for him. You can see he totally does not think that Jamie would just kill him right on the spot. Like, he is so sure of his living for 5 more years thing that he has no fear that a furious Jamie Fraser that you just told you're planning to overthrow is just going to sit there and not kill you on the spot, So I just thought it was pretty brass balls of him to do. I mean, Cleveland would have already killed him. Cleveland was coming to on him when Jamie said, I'll take care of people on my land and all that stuff in the last episode. So, like, he's only alive because of Jamie. So he better back off. So Jamie hears the VO. I told you, Fraser, it's coming. The pieces are falling into place just as I wrote. Each day brings you closer to King's Mountain and closer to your history. It ends with a dun, 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 So I had said it as a question to you guys. Why do you think Jamie would just walk away when everything is now out on the table? And why? And then we get this preview for next week. And we see, like, they go off to Savannah. He tells Claire, battle's coming here. We need to get the weapons and blah, blah, blah. And she agrees. And then he goes off with Ian. Apparently, they hear some Scotsman is around looking to come to Fraser's Ridge, and they're going to intercept it, apparently. And so they go off. And Claire is left there by herself. Why would he leave Claire there by herself with no man protection person around, knowing what this guy's up to? It just seems like there's all this, like he's letting this be. So I don't know about that. I am glad we're getting to Savannah next week with Max. Hopefully that means we'll get more interesting things happening for them. Jamie and Ian are looking for this Scottish fellow. And apparently it's somebody that's a reveal of some kind because of the way you saw in the previews, Jamie kind of reaching over and pulling his shoulder around. And it's somebody with this little black hat. And then they also show the riding. And remember I said that other person, we couldn't figure out the third rider. And I said, it doesn't look like Claire because it's not the body shape of a woman. I think it's whoever that is. So I don't know if it's somebody that joins them, somebody we know from before, which I can't think of who that would be, or if it's Ferguson himself, which is what I think they think it is because he's Scottish, because Ferguson was a Scot. I don't know. And then we got that horrible thing of Cunningham creeping on Claire, which I didn't like that at all. That's also new. I have a feeling that at this point, we're going to start diverging into more that's new. We're pretty far into bees at this point with some of the stuff they showed. So I think we're going to start getting newer twists and things for the remainder of the season. Here's what we still are waiting for. We're still waiting for Master Raymond's appearance. We're still waiting for Buck and Rob and all of that stuff. When do you guys think that's coming in? When do you think we're going to start getting the Buck story and the Rob story? That hasn't been introduced yet, but we know that's coming. So I'm wondering how that's going to come in. I would have thought that we would have seen that by now. Let me read Tom. See, it didn't look like Tom Christie because it looks like somebody very tall, like he's the same height as Jamie on the horse. Because you could see now on the shot from the preview, you saw Ian's over on this side, then Jamie, and it's the person that's the other side of Jamie. And it looks like the same person that they found. So it looks too skinny to be Tom Christie, although that would have been interesting. So I'm not sure who it is. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying. Faith was born with red hair. No, well, supposedly, okay, but we didn't see the baby born. We only saw the baby they brought to her. And that baby had red hair. But maybe that wasn't the actual baby. I'm just saying that's a theory. You know what I mean? That maybe when she had the baby, because she was out and then she came back and she woke up, where's my baby? Maybe they had taken the baby out. And at that point, that baby still wasn't completely dead or was just maybe barely alive, but they knew it wasn't going to survive, that it was non-viable or something. That's what they thought. And they put it aside and they went to finish dealing with her. And when they did that, Master Raymond took that baby. So when she was yelling to give her baby, they brought this other baby in from one of the women that had a miscarriage or one of the prostitutes that needed to get rid of a slip of Baron or whatever, because they had angel makers, so that was a regular thing they dealt with. So because they had an argument about it, and when she was arguing about giving Brie an abortion, and she said you didn't mind it when in France when they had the angel makers in France, you didn't mind. Well, those women had no choice. So you get the impression they dealt with that a lot. So they might have just wanted to get her calmed down because she was freaking out so much. And they gave her this baby to hold and just like made her think it was her baby to calm her down. You know what I mean? It could be something like that. There's a lot of different ways it could go. Still don't like the Faith storyline, not with Diane. Yeah, I know, but we've kind of decided that's what they're doing. I'm not going to keep weighing on it every time it comes up. I'm trying to just figure out what they're going to do. You know? Jamie hasn't learned that women in his life do not do what he tells them to do. I know, that was the first thing I thought when she showed up after he told her not to come and stay there. He told her a couple times. I thought, maybe she is related to Claire. Because she doesn't stay where she's told. Maybe Jamie didn't want to risk a fight in front of Fanny. Oh, because of Cleveland. You mean by telling him, no, you're not taking the guns. I think the whole thing caught him so off guard as well. And her there did cause a complication. He couldn't go totally red Jamie, and scare the shit out of her. So yeah, it makes sense too. Yeah. Tom says Red Ross, if anybody watches Friends. Cunningham wants the ridge. He wants that property seized and take Jamie as a prisoner for Patrick Ferguson. Yeah, that's what he wants. He ain't getting it though. Nope, that ain't happening. But I also think if he kept the guns, then Bree and Roger won't really need to go to Savannah for guns. That's what I thought. I thought the reason that they did it that way was so that they would need to get the guns, but it kind of feels contrived. They would have had their guns if he would have just stood up to Cleveland. But I do like the idea that he couldn't do that in front of Fanny. He couldn't get violent in front of her. And that kind of changed how he was going to react. He just wanted to get them away. So I get that. Rima says that she thinks he wants to test how many settlers are with him. So he wants to observe to kind of get a handle because he doesn't want somebody else just stepping in and doing it anyway. So that makes sense too. It was important to let Cunningham knows he knows what he's up to. I just feel like now he's giving him a chance to regroup under this new information. They need a lot more guns than what was in that wagon, Lisa says. They confiscated those guns in the books. Embry and Roger still had to go buy guns. They have to arm a militia. Yeah. Dad Jamie kicked in for Fanny. Yes. He's strategizing. Maybe it's Willie from season 1. That would be crazy. I don't think it's Tom Christie. Didn't look that body shape to me. But that's why that third person kept bothering me, and all those writing things. I kept trying to figure it out. So I'm seeing Ian and I'm seeing Jamie, but I don't know who this third person is. It doesn't look like Claire because their body shape wasn't like Claire. And he was as tall as Jamie, it looked like, in the saddle. His head was even with Jamie's head. So I couldn't figure out who it was. I think it's whoever they find. It's somebody that was looking for Fraser's Ridge. So it might be somebody that's come from Scotland. That's somebody that they know. I'm not sure. I don't know who it is. Hamish. Wouldn't that be awesome if it was Hamish? That would be crazy. That would definitely be full circle. Oh, that would be a great call. Because it's somebody that's a Scot, somebody that doesn't know where Fraser's Ridge is, that is like looking for it. They're making their way there. That Ian doesn't recognize, but he talked as a Scot, said he was on his way there too. So, wait, and then they showed a clip of him seeing this hat, him bending over like he's going to rip him around. But the suspense thing was, who is it? Because the way that they're showing it, like they're hiding who it is to surprise you with it. So I'm trying to think of who that could be. It kind of makes me feel like it's going to be somebody that is a returning character from the beginning. I don't think it's Buck because it's not big enough to be Buck. He's thin. It's a thin person that almost looks very straight backed and has like a little hat. Yeah, but Buck McKenzie is tall, but he's also big. And this guy didn't look that big. I'll have to show you a picture. I'll get a screen cap. But I'm curious who that's going to be. Very curious. Trying to think, is there anybody else that we can think of? So I want to just see if there's anything on here that I wanted to tell you. Okay, another reason I want to do these reviews after was, like, I didn't knock down the first episode because because they didn't use the broadsheet thing, but then I found out that Diana said they're not going to use the broadsheet thing, that it was pointless to include Jane's confession when they're not going to turn around and use it for anything. So I'm mad that that's not going to be included because it should have been, I think. She does a deed about the book. People are saying, was it used to manipulate Claire? And she said no, but she was talking about how he's obsessed with Jamie. Wouldn't you be in his circumstance? And he's a historian, he knows how to research. And in the course of looking for mentions of Jamie Fraser, he's become interested in the Scots of North Carolina and their history and psychology. It's as close as he can presently come to finding and facing down the man his wife loves. He's also fascinated with warfare. He's been on a major league war. He's been a spy. He is, or should be by now, acutely conscious of what makes men tick when they're making war. He wrote that book, I think, as the closest thing he could get to knowing Jamie, if not actually having an imaginary conversation with him. And in fact, perhaps ironically, Bree brings that book to the past with her for the sake of Frank, not Jamie. She may not have read it herself. It might, with this photo of Frank, just be an evocation of him. Roger, who does read it, tells us that it mentions quite a few men named Jamie Fraser. One of them might be our Jamie, but it's just as likely that none of them are. The show chose to make it ham-handedly unequivocal. There's a war and Jamie Fraser dies in it, shock horror. But per book, it's not that at all. There are several James Frasers, and the book does not identify any of them specifically as of Fraser's Ridge. So that's what she says on the book. On the vest, she says in the book, because it was a question of whether or not in the book she had made it just for William, as opposed to what the show is with the Ben thing. And she says in the book, Amaranthus does indeed embroider the vest specifically for William. And they have a flirtatious passage where she points out the different beetles, touching them and touching him as she does so. Then she tells him their names. Per book, Amaranthus rather notably does not talk about Ben unless she has to. She says in the show, Amaranthus is a lot less overt, shall we say, than book Amaranthus. But that's partly visual. They picked a little squirt of an actress again, meaning no derogation. She's a good actress. She's just short, which makes it harder to show chemistry with a young man who's a foot taller. And partly because it being the show and not the book, we're seeing Amaranthus externally, while in the book, we're seeing her almost exclusively through William's eyes, and he's clearly and deliberately taken with her. So that's what she says on that. Okay, so those are my Diana dates. You guys, let me see what you guys are saying, and then we'll close out if you don't have any questions. Any thoughts on what's going to happen next week? Who do you think the Scottish guy is? We got Hamish. Lisa says she'll hate it if it's a baby swap situation. I don't know about baby swap. It's just, I just think that it could be that when they went to retrieve the baby, it was gone. And they did it to kind of give her something to calm her down. Because remember how erratic she was? She was breaking statues. She was freaking out all over the place, like knocking shit over and everything. And they were trying to get her to calm down. And if that at that point that baby was gone, I could see them bringing her a different baby just to kind of calm her down, as she never knowing the difference. It's not the like, oh, let's purposefully swap the baby. It's not that type of thing. I just think that was later, and that baby might already been gone. So Angus is dead, huh? It can't be Angus. Not Hope, Faith. He said,
Hope in one hand, faith in
he said, well, they thought Hope was dead and she wasn't. I think Angus is dead, hon. We saw the blood spurting out of his face. He's dead. Lisa says, I still hate it. All right, you guys. I'll be putting this up on YouTube and on Patreon. So when you see it on YouTube, feel free to share it with anybody you think might like it. It'll be edited with a lot of our pregnant pauses and stuff out. Drop a comment if you can. Hit a like on it so I can try to grow that side of things. And until next time, much love. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.